Hi, thank you for joining me. My name is John Newby. This is John 2028 Apologetics. And today's video is going to be a review on the question and answering part with atheists during a debate. I recommend you watch the entirety of the debate. It's got Dr. James White and Jeff Durbin. They're with Apologia Academy, and they're debating two atheists about morality. The atheist names are Dr. Green Chatterjee and Jared Anderson. And this is at the University of Utah. This is about a month ago. But I'm sure you've heard of, deflecting. It's where you're doing something that you're accusing the other people of doing. So atheists like to pretend that there's some, intellectual giant or some standard. They're just smarter than everyone, and they don't use any faith. They don't use any type of system like that to come to conclusions that they accuse us Christians of. But this is here the question and answering. And I want you to listen to this part right here. The moderator here is going to ask the atheist a question here, and listen to how he responds. This has got to do with the body of Jesus not being in the tomb. This is one of the strongest arguments that Christians have, is that, where was his body? We have records, we have documentation that his body's not there. We even have hostile witness statements from Celsus and others, the non-Christian sources, hostile witnesses talking about trying to explain where his body went. There's no record historically of people parading his body around. Rome and the adversaries of Christianity wanted to dissolve Christianity. All they had to do was parade his dead body around, and you could have abolished Christianity right then and there, but they couldn't do it. It was heavily guarded. And where did his body go? And minus all the evidence, and that question kept being brought up in this debate. And that evidence alone listen to how this atheist tries to respond. Listen to the faith, the deflection. Listen to this.
The format of the questions, I'll ask the questions. The person or the side to whom they are addressed has 2 minutes, and then there's 30 seconds for the other side. How about we do this 1 minute?
2 minutes is a long time.
2 minutes was what was in the was what was
How
agreed.
about we do 1 minute, guys?
I'm good.
Get them done fast that way.
Yep. Okay. If you're agreeable, there's one question
so,
that
here we go. We're about to get to the question.
It starts with the negative side, so we can go back and forth. Is that acceptable? People are dying to hear. How do you explain the empty tomb, Mr. Anderson?
Joseph of Arimathea moved his body.
So Joseph of Arimathea moved his body. That's his argument. There's absolutely zero shred of evidence that that's what happened. He can say that there is, but there isn't. He doesn't present any. He just states it, all off faith. And listen to what he says here at the end for a second.
So what happened is, I believe that Joseph of Arimathea was a sympathizer of Jesus. I believe Joseph of Arimathea was someone in power. The more status you have, the closer your tombs were to Jerusalem. And so what would have happened to the crucified?
Listen to this reasoning, him trying to reason. There's no evidence that supports this historically. He doesn't have any writings from Joseph of Arimathea. He doesn't have any friends or sympathizers of Joseph of Arimathea like we have of the gospel, or like we have of Celsus, these hostile witnesses. Nothing like that. No historical evidence of them parading his body around, or that his body was snuck out and hid somewhere else. That doesn't explain that the guards, by the way, were put to death that guarded his tomb. The guards didn't say that Joseph of Arimathea bribed them, or that he paid for them to have the body removed. So also that doesn't explain how the centurions or the guards would even let that happen. Their whole job is to guard the tomb. These men would die the most painful death protecting and doing their honor. You think they're going to, this guy's a sympathizer for this fake dead Messiah. They're going to let him pull the body out and bury it because Joseph of Arimathea felt sorry for Jesus? This is the level of faith and belief that atheists have. It's absolutely astounding when they want to ignore all the other evidence about the crucifixion and the resurrection, but he'll believe this. And notice he did say, I believe.
Those crucified would have been thrown into a mass grave. And Joseph of Arimathea did not want that done to Jesus.
No evidence.
And so Joseph of Arimathea went out on a limb, and he had
this is just
Jesus
fantasy.
put in his own tomb. Like, I think all of
Just
this
fantasy.
is very historically credible. As I alluded, I did PhD training in New Testament study.
Yeah, no one cares. So he's trying to make it seem as if it could be somewhat logical, but he produces no evidence. Zero evidence.
And then Joseph of Arimathea had himself a very nice Sabbath. And at the end of Sabbath...
So this is just like some thought that he's just playing out in his head, some wishful thinking with no evidence. That's what drives me crazy, is that you can't say you're all evidence-based when you have no evidence to support your claim, just because you don't want to accept the evidence of the other claim.
Which was Saturday evening, he went and he asked his servants, hey, could you move that body out of my family's tomb? Thanks. And I think his servants buried Jesus somewhere, and I would love to know where.
Yeah, he would look at the piety and his nose up in the air. I would love to know where. Yeah, you would love to know where, because you want this to be true, and you want this to be true because you want to live in your sin, and you want to live in your sin because you love your sin more than God, and you love the lifestyle that you've chosen to live. You pretend, you make up this whole fake with no historical backing, no evidence based at all. There's zero. This is just a theory based upon his own beliefs and intuition of what he wants to be true. This is all just emotion.
Response?
And so the tomb was empty
Notice that he admits that the tomb was empty. He's just having to explain it, because the historical record from the Bible and the non-biblical historical record all say that the tomb was empty. So he has to explain it, but he has no evidence to support this.
his disciples found it. Like that is a valid tradition. And fascinatingly, Mark...
There's no valid tradition where centurions and guards let somebody's body that was crucified due to through a judicial system be just let out and given to somebody because they feel sorry for the person that went through the crucifixion. There's no evidence that that's ever occurred. It's just silly and stupid.
16, really quick, Mark 16:8 says, the women didn't tell anyone anything because they were afraid. Super interesting.
It has nothing to do with...
For the affirmative.
the women not telling anybody because they're afraid had nothing to do with it.
Do I get a response?
I'm sorry. Yes, I'm just getting old.
I would like to, in
please.
30 seconds. Of course, there's nothing historical about that at all. It's pure speculation. You have Jesus's own prophecies, his own statements to his disciples.
And then James goes in here and shows that not only does the historical record not support that, but the historical record of the Old Testament, which foretold about the coming Messiah, was fulfilled. So how do you explain that as well? So this is just, it's funny because atheists like to pretend that everything's based upon evidence when you see a clear example here in this debate where all this was just faith-based, wishful thinking. They have more faith than Christians do. It takes more faith to ignore all the evidence of the crucifixion and resurrection to automatically just come out with some fan theory, atheist theory, and just throw it out, and that's what he believes. Because there's no evidence that supports his theory at all. That requires more faith. Thank you for listening.